am very pleased to announce Patricia Pugh. Patty has her MBA and she is currently CEO of Advanced Reproductive Specialists, through which I have seen her do some incredible things. Additionally, she's the principal owner of Expert Medical Advisors, where she draws on decades of healthcare administration experience to empower medical professionals to establish, maintain profitable practice and prioritizing patient needs. What I love about Patty is she's great about helping practices that were with an MSO that then separate and form their own company again. She's able to help them streamline revenue processes very quickly. She's got over 20 years of leadership experience overseeing family practice and women's healthcare organizations, streamlining day-to-day operations and implementing practical business strategies. I'm not going to go through her full bio here, but I will say she's past president of the Florida State MGMA and the North Florida Local MGMA. She is going to give us a wonderful program today on how to, basically some HR best practices, how to attract and retain quality employees. Patty?
Honey, thank you for your introduction and for having me speak today on such a great topic. I know that a lot of practices are very passionate about what's going on in the healthcare industry and the turnover. And, I'm even hearing outside managers and so forth, turnover is, just, we can't keep it under control and it's hard to keep staff. And so we're working very hard to kind of see what happened here and where to spiral from. So I always like to start out with good news. The good news is what I'm seeing, and from talking to other healthcare professionals, is the people that are leaving and going from one practice to another are staying within the healthcare industry. So that's good news. On the other hand, why are people leaving? So I did a lot of research on retention and, bringing people in and attracting. And so over the past 2 years, I actually kind of started this before COVID. This is kind of my suggestions and what I have found and what's working for me and what's not. And this is what I'm really excited about to share with you. And hopefully you can take this back to your practices as well and share this information with your administrators and your practice owners. Let's do a little bit of history. 20, 30 years ago, employers would hire people. What was important to employees then was, they had a job, they went to school, mom and dad's like, you got to work hard, earn a living, get a job, have a great retirement plan, have great benefits. And at the end of the day, you do, you go in, you work your hard hours and you go home at the end of the day and then you retire. But since then, things have really shifted. We had a shift here. And so a big shift, and it happened right after COVID. What happened was we had a lot of people self-reflecting during COVID, and they're thinking, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to do this. Life's too short. And so now there's been a complete employee shift the other way. And here we are as an employers trying to figure it out. As employers, we have to change. We have to shift with the employees, unfortunately. And so the whole day of the days where, this is going to be this way, or, this isn't going to work. And we're going to it doesn't work that way anymore. The first thing that I really like to circle in on first is, because I'm a numbers person, is, what's your turnover rate? How many people really pull what their turnover rate? And if you do, that's great. But, go back 3 years and see what your turnover rate is. And if I benchmark it, because I benchmark everything, if you're, under 10%, well, you're doing pretty well. If you're 15, 20%, you're doing okay. But anything above 20%, well, you got some things going on in your practice that you probably need to reevaluate. So that's the first part of it. But the second part of it is, do we really understand the cost for turnover? Because it's not on our profit and loss statements. It's something we have to kind of gather that data behind the scenes. So depending what that number is, if it's someone that is a frontline person or, a medical assistant or whatever whatever their job description is, you're looking at 20 to 25% of their salary is what your turnover costs are going to be. If you're looking at professionals like a physician, nurse practitioner, it could be up to 400%. Really depends. So those are things that you really need to sit back and look at and look what those costs are. And then based off that, what do you need to do internally? If you have an issue with turnover, I will let you know, I know practices that are at 50%, just so you know, if that's how bad it is out there. And I've seen some above that. So, if that's the case, then that's a pretty high turnover cost. And so, what can we do to kind of make that shift, change, what we're doing in the past to what our strategy is going to be in the future. So first off, I always ask people, why are people leaving? Why are people leaving? So when I looked, and we did a lot of exit interviews. So, I have to be honest with you, we honestly thought we had a culture problem or had a significant problem before COVID. So we started doing a lot of research, and that was what was driving me to do research. So I got way ahead of the ballgame, not knowing that there was even going to be a bigger problem after COVID. So some of the things that we were finding is, compensation, benefits was some of the big issues at that time. Obviously, management always plays a key role into it. But we're looking at childcare. People have to pay childcare expenses. We were looking at career development, workload. How much were you placing on these people? Do people really? If people are worried about work-life balance and you're making them work 50 hours a week, well, then that's a problem. Lack of recognition. Are you recognizing the value that these employees are bringing to the table? And then the work-life balance, and then finally culture, which Connie touched on, which will be a part 2. And I have to tell you, we really sat and looked back at our practice and what we were lacking in, and part of it was culture, and that was pre-COVID for our practice. So basically, the personality of our practice wasn't what it really needed to be. And so after COVID, a lot of practices found out their personalities of their organizations weren't where they needed to be as well. So everyone needed to kind of take a step back and see, okay, what do we need to do and improve? So we kind of have an idea. And, if you're not doing exit interviews when people are leaving or employees are leaving, I highly recommend, because you can gather so much information just from those exit interviews so that you can build upon it. And sometimes you can save employees. If it really is a compensation issue and you're paying below market, I would think it would pay for you, knowing the cost of turnover, that you would want to elevate. So those are some items that we kind of took into perspective. Knowing that our biggest problem within our practice at that time was culture. We found that, people were leaving because they were dissatisfied. They didn't feel like they were being treated fairly. They didn't feel like they were valued. They didn't feel like they were being recognized and that people cared about them. So we kind of really sat back, took a big snapshot of what the practice looked like, and then we revamped our culture, and we put trainings together for culture. We started out doing a major culture training right during COVID, believe it or not. And then from there, we kind of just built on it. Culture does play a big role. And when it's funny, while we interview people, one of the biggest reasons when we're interviewing people that are coming into our practice right now is culture. They'll say, I don't like the culture I'm in right now. They don't care about me. That is what I'm hearing right now when I'm asking people, why are you leaving your current job? That's what they're telling us. So I think as employers, especially independent practices, we really need to take a step back and think about, okay, what is it that we want to do moving forward? There is a lot of variables and a lot of puzzle pieces or key ingredients that goes into retaining and attracting great employees. I feel that you can't just have just a couple of them. And if you're going to leave here today and say, I'm going to go home, I'm going to go back to my practice, I'm build a great culture, it takes years. I'm just telling you, I've been working on this project for 2 years. We are actually seeing a difference. We've been working very hard, and we started during COVID. So we started ahead of the ball game. So the first thing when we're looking to hire someone for our position is, what is the job description? I see many, many practice administrators and managers, just, a physician will come to them and say, you know what, we need to hire an MA, or we need to create this position. Well, and then they just put a job ad out. You need to be able to be transparent and have it and be able to explain what the expectation is when that person is coming in for the interview. So I highly recommend to always have a job description in place first. And then from there, build off your job ad. Now, knowing I come from a background in customer service and sales, we're always selling. If you go through and look at job ads, and I curiously want, at times when I'm at home, I'll sit on a couch and just look at what jobs are out there and look at their job ads. You need to sell your practice. If you're just putting a job out saying, okay, growing practice, looking for blah, 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 and putting down with the jobs, is that really bringing great candidates? They want to know what you're going to do for them. Why should they work for you? So I highly recommend to, a great practice. We've been in business for 30 years. We have, a great working environment. We have, just really spell out what you can bring to the table to help them. And as I talk more onto more slides, you're going to get a better understanding of what people are truly looking for. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. One of the things I think is great to add on to job descriptions, I know a lot of times people will put, other duties as assigned, but because we're trying to get employee engagement and really trying to get these employees engaged and get focused and be part of that whole culture that you're building, I always put additional responsibilities. My job is to inspire greatness in my team by serving as a coach to help people thrive. I want people that are going to come in and be passionate for what they do. I want them to be passionate for practice management, passionate for patient care. I want them to be able to work as a team, to collaborate, to give us ideas and bring items to the table when things aren't functioning correctly. Those are the type of people we want to hire. And those are the types of things that you should be talking about in your interview process when you do that. So where am I getting all these people? New grads. I mean, I know it's hard. You can go, there's a traditional LinkedIn. I don't use Monster anytime, but we use a lot of new grads. We find that bringing new grads, they seem to energize because they want to they're a sponge. They want to learn. So we find that that's very helpful. Internal referral program. So we started right after COVID doing the internal referral program. So if we have employees that know someone that wants to come in and they stay there at least a year, both of them, then we pay them a retainer of $500 to $1,000. And so it's, you're paying more for a recruiter if you hire a recruiter, which is another avenue to go, but it's very expensive. So we kind of like try to do as much as we can without going that way, but if we have to, we will. There's the career fairs, there's job boards, as always, social media platforms, there's Facebook, LinkedIn, there is working remotely and hybrid. I suggest that, if you truly do have positions that are remote or hybrid, that does, bring people to the table that they're going to hire. It brings quality candidates. There are people, so the last statistics I looked at is like 12 to 15% are only want to be in the office and everybody pretty much else wants to work hybrid or remote. Those are the last statistics I pulled. I'll just plug in here. I know a lot of CEOs are trying, there's a lot of buzz going out there about CEOs, the bigger CEOs want to bring all these people back into the office by 2025. I don't think it's going to happen. That's just my personal opinion. I think that with this whole shift with employees, there's just no way that it'll completely happen at 100%. And I know that's what they're pushing for, but based off my studies and what I've looked at, you're going to get your best performing employees if you kind of have that flexibility for your staff. And so that's just my suggestion. Stay in touch with old candidates. I have candidates that move, or I had a really, I'll give you an example. I had a nurse practitioner who ended up taking a position because she wanted to go into academics instead into practice management. So what we did, when she started her other job, we actually sent her flowers and said, we wish you best of luck. And that we're hoping that if she doesn't like academics, that she thinks of us and comes back to us. So we do little extra things like that to help, think about candidates and get them in the door as well. It may not be now, but for something in the future, because people will remember those types of things. And then the other thing that's really key too, is I found as we were hiring is, it's you want to do this process quickly. So if you're placing an ad out, review those resumes within a week. When you're interviewing, get back with those people in a week. And I highly recommend, if you can't meet those, short-term deadlines, and you really like a candidate, ask the candidate, I've done this as well, are you interviewing anywhere else? Because I've lost candidates because we were not quick enough. So that's key. And they were good. They were they were going to be very good employees, I felt like anyway at the time. The next piece of it is the interviewing and the selection process. So what is your pre-screening process? Do you pre-screen? We pre-screen our candidates, and then we make sure that they're going to be a fit. We, ask them various questions. We have like 10 questions we ask on the pre-screening process. We also ask, we also are asking, what is your interviewing process? When you do bring them in, how do you handle your interviewing process? I could do a whole separate presentation just on interviewing. We use a lot of behavioral interviewing. So, there's like 7 key indicators that are important to us, whether it's adaptability, whether it's communication, and based on their job description, those are the questions that we tailor to make sure that that candidate is going to be a perfect fit, because we want to make sure that we have someone that their niche is, if it is communication or whatever it may be, that we're certainly really focusing in on that. What's your process selection? And then the compensation and benefits. So you want to make sure that after you select your candidate. And we are just working on right now doing a point system. So as we ask our questions, we always ask the same questions for all candidates. And then from there, we have a point system. And then that's what helps us hire the best candidates. And then the last piece of it, once you have a candidate, then, go over that compensation and those benefits. Earlier, when I went into this practice, they did not have a lot of processes and strategies set up. One of the things where they were bringing people in and they weren't really truly finding out, hey, and reviewing what the benefits were for our practice. We get them in there and then all of a sudden, we can't afford your benefits, or your benefits are not meeting my needs. Which those types of things could have been alleviated and cut down on our turnover rate had that been reviewed. So we go as far as sharing our benefits with them, going over the compensation, sharing, what their PTO and what everything else is, to make sure that that is going to be a fit for them, because we want to make sure that we, again, alleviate that turnover. So, we kind of talked about the selection process. We get them in there. So what do we need to do? How do we get these people engaged? How do we identify what they need? And the information that I'm going to share with you, I feel like was really, really important. It's been working for us. And we have really changed a lot of items that we didn't have. We've added some things. So as I go over them, I'll share with you what those are. So the first thing is onboarding. We didn't have a very good onboarding process, to be honest with you. We brought them in, they had to do their HIPAA compliance training. They had to do this, they had to do their practice management. They might've spent a couple hours with someone and then they were basically thrown on the floor. And so, because we needed people, we needed bodies. So that was not fair to those employees. And a lot of times when we did exit interviews, your training program's horrible, which it was. So we had to sit down and think, okay, how are we going to redevelop this and what's it going to look like? So the next thing is, because we brought in culture and we really focused on culture, did culture training, we worked on mission. Everything in our practice is mission driven. Every decision we make is because of mission, and our mission is all about patient care, and we want to get to that next level. It's about patient engagement. So we drive everything in that area. So when people come in, first off, we tell them the history. We tell them how we got started. We tell them about all the people that work. We go through who they were. We have them meet them. We meet and greet with people. We also talk about then the culture, the mission, the values. When I started there, we did not have any values. So we now have values in place, core values. We live by our core values. When we set up our culture training, we really basically focused on the best version of yourself. So it was very important to us to make sure that there was balance between work and for your personal life. And so we wanted to make sure and take out the saying, like, leave your problems at the door. We don't tell our employees that anymore. You can't. There is so much going on in the world today that they're going to bring their problems in. But you can be there to kind of coach and help them and give them the resources they need. And I think that has really helped us with our strategy when we're meeting and onboarding with people. So we actually set a whole entire PowerPoint up on that, and we continue to add to it. And so it really lays out the expectation of what we're expecting from our new hires that are coming in. The second thing is, when you do onboard them, treat them like family, welcome them in there, be excited, greet them like someone's coming to your house first time. Hey, we're so excited for you to be here today. Do you need anything to drink? What do you need anything for your desk? We got you all set up. Is there things we're missing? Make them feel like they are important, and get them engaged, and get them, ask them questions. What's your learning curve, and so forth. So those are some other issues that we kind of brought to the table as well, that because we weren't doing a great job welcoming them in. Training and development. So one of our problems that I saw was training. We didn't do a great job training. We kind of just threw them out there. They got some training. We didn't have a great SOPs on, within the practice for the processes. So what we did was we sat down, and part of our onboarding process is we actually sit down and we do our training program with them. Every person's learning curve is different. So you can't just standardize your training program, because some people are visual, some people can do both, so we actually sit down and get a feel of how we set up our training programs. So what we do for the first 90 days now is, when they come in, when we do their onboarding, we actually sit with them. We talk about what their training style is. We lay out what we're going to do, and we do a 2-week program. And then every 2 weeks, we bring the employee back in and we sit down and see what happened, how's things going. Were you successful with the last 2 weeks? What resources, what tools do you need? We really have a lot of engagement going on there. We're getting a lot of feedback, and we feel, and honestly, since we started this, we're getting people trained faster. So it's been very helpful. So that's worked very well for us. Obviously, the flexible schedules. One of the biggest thing, and I've always been flexible, but flexibility is very important. So family life is important. We value family life in our culture. So, if people do need off, we always try to accommodate. We do have hybrid and remote. We don't bring people in right away for hybrid and remote. They have to go through a training program, and obviously they have to be up with their performance. But the other piece of it is in the past, we would have managers or team leads come to us and say, you know what, Jane is not doing well. She has a performance problem, and I think we need to let her go. So, the first thing I would say to them is say, okay, tell me about Jane's training program. Is she successful? Did you give her everything she needed to be there? Did you check in on her? And then they would say, well, no, she doesn't, and did you meet your checklist? We actually we're putting checklists together for our job descriptions as well. We don't have them all completed, but that's another thing that we're working on. It's not fair to the employee if you did not do your due diligence. So it's not the employee's fault. So, at some point, once they get through that training program and then you know that you have a performance problem, then that's when you take the next steps. But again, you're increasing your turnover rate when you really did not do your due diligence up front with your training program. So we have been training our management team and our leadership team in coaching. So one of the great things that we found was very important is we want partnerships with our employees. So our culture is part of partnerships. So when people come in, we want them to have autonomy. We've had managers in practices in the past where they just, they can't do that. They don't know how to do that. They're not trained. They can't do that. We don't take that we don't look at it that way anymore. We basically want to bring people in. We want to train them. We want them to feel comfortable, and we want them to be able to make decisions. The new era, these new employees, they want to be able to make decisions. They want autonomy. They want to make decisions. They want flexibility. So we're putting these tools in place. We're putting a lot of emphasis on our training programs to get there. And it takes time because, again, everybody's learning curve is different. I can train someone very quickly in 30 days, and I might take someone 120 days for the same job. So it's just different. So those were some experiences we've had that have been very successful, and we continue to do them and build off of them. The other thing is, if you are going to have patients or have employees work remote, can you offer stipends, offering, you want to pay for their internet, or do you want to offer them some type of, office supplies or whatever it may be? Just another addition or another value added. Wellness offering. What do you do for wellness offering? We started doing yoga there for a while in the evenings, like maybe once a month. Just wellness and kind of meditation. We've actually had coaches. We had a coach come in and talk with all our staff, which was very helpful. And then the other thing that what we felt was important was the recognition, the work-life balance, making sure we try to alleviate all overtime if we can. Obviously we have deadlines to meet in the practice as well. But for the most part, we try to standardize a 40-hour week, and we even try to do that with our salary people. Our salary people, may work additional hours, but, our salary people are not working 70 hours a week. We try to kind of just stay away from that. And because our nurse practitioners, we value that, we want them seeing patients and making sure that they're getting out at 5 o'clock to home and see their families. So communication was another piece that was very important, making sure that we're communicating. And I will tell you, if you have a poor communication or you're not communicating change, how we always hear, there's gossip in the office and it causes morale issues. Well, as leaders, we need to make sure when there's changes within your organization, whatever they mean, minor or major, you need to make sure you're communicating that. Because if you don't, your employees are going to fill in the gaps with gossip. So filling in those gaps, so you want to alleviate them doing that. So that communication is key, totally. And then feedback and performance. So we found two. I will tell you, we were horrible at doing performance reviews just because we didn't have it. With turnover and so forth, we did not do a great job. So we kind of went additional step. If you're doing a great job meeting with your staff and asking them, hey, how am I doing? Then your performance reviews are going to become very easy. And so we are launching in January a new performance review system in January to kind of start. But also we've started going around and saying, hey, how are we doing? What can we do for you? Do you have everything you need? We're constantly checking in with our people, and we are constantly trying to build that partnership. We're here for patient care. And so we're always looking for patient engagement, making sure that we're going that extra mile and that whole customer service piece of it. And that's our external customers. But I sometimes feel like we forget about our internal customers, because our employees are customers as well. And we need to make sure we're getting them engaged and we're going that extra mile for them. And we make sure we're communicating to them and giving them everything that they need. And so those are some of the big strides that we have taken. And I feel like we've done a lot better. I will tell you, in the last 3 weeks, I've actually had people come to me and said, Patty, we love coming to work. So that was like a big refresher. I will tell you that we went through some heartache. We had some turnover when we implemented our new culture training, and made some big changes in the organization. I mean, there was a lot of resistance and we had turnover. But since then, we're actually having employees come and tell us that stayed, that they love it, which makes you feel really rewarded knowing that you were able to accomplish that. But we continue to work on this daily. It's in progress all the time. We're trying just to keep going and keep seeing what people want, seeing what these employees want, and so forth. And, we're trying to do the milestones. But the biggest thing that I feel is important for you guys to take away is really building those partnerships. And so we've kind of taken the word manager out of our system. I mean, we understand that when it gets to a point, you do have to enforce policy, or you do have to, make those hard decisions about if someone's performance is really truly performance. But at the end of the day, we're coaching. Hey, let's coach them. Let's talk them up. And this was another thing that we've stopped doing as well. In the olden days, if you did something wrong, you got written off, you got that pink slip. Well, we've stopped doing that. We don't do corrective action forms unless it gets to that level. And at that level, we know 100% that we need to be there. But before that, we're coaching. We're coaching and documenting. I mean, from an HR standpoint, I'm not an HR expert, but you still got to document, because those crucial conversations are important if you do get to that level. But until you get to that level, we are coaching. Coach. I am coaching very hard with the managers. I just had one come to me the other day, Patty, this is what's going on with X, Y, and Z. Like, I don't know what to say to her. I don't know how to handle it. And so I said, what do you think? Do you think we should do this? Or do you think, so we're giving them ideas. I'm helping them be able to approach people. It's all about approach and that soft touch. Because we want people to flourish. We want people to flourish in our practice. We want people to be happy to come in and know that they're comfortable, that it's like their home. And so we're working very hard to get to the highest level possible. And I feel we still have a lot of work to do, but I do feel that we are truly building those partnerships, because when I looked at statistics and what people really want, they want autonomy, they want self-worth, they want to feel like they can be set up for success, that they can grow within your company. Processes and technology, they don't want to come into a company that your technology is horrible, so they want to be efficient so they can get their job done efficiently. So they're not there an extra hour because your server is so slow, or your internet, or your whatever it may be is not working properly. That makes it harder for them. And then processes, making sure you have the standard operating processes in place so that people can do their job and they know what the expectation is. Anytime, this was another thing that we implement, anytime we make changes to processes, we have change forms. We send them out and then we let them know and update it. Hey, this is the process has changed. We're trying to, again, get the communication out there so that everybody is on the same page, because when everybody's on, they get frustrated, causes chaos within the office. But again, we really are looking for leadership in our practice, that we don't want those repulsive leaders anymore. We want people that are proactive, that want to be engaged, that are happy. We want positivity in our practice. We know that we live through negativity all the time. But, we want to be able to, when we're approaching people not being negative, we want to spin it off in a positive way. And that's what we're coaching our staff up to do. So basically, that's pretty much some of the things that I feel is most important. So, how do you attract and retain quality employees? Well, first off, it starts with leadership. I will tell you from a culture standpoint, it's very, very important that your owners at the top understand where you're driving culture to and what you're trying to strategically achieve. Because if you don't have their buy-in and your management team is solely the only ones doing it and they're not all, working together, you're still going to achieve the same objective. But if you have turnover in your management team, it's all going to fall apart. So it really does stop at the top, and you really have to get with those physician owners, get their buy-in, have those communications, have those meetings, talk with everybody. And, at the end of the day, it's going to be a greater place. So I covered a lot of things today, and there is a lot of key ingredients in order what we did to get to where we're at. And so, sales is part of it. Your recruiting process. What does your recruiting process look like in your practice? Do you have job descriptions? How are your job ads set up? Interviewing. How do you do your interviewing? What's your culture look like? Rate your culture, grade it. Is it an A, B, C, D? What is the personality of your practice? And so compensation and benefits. One of the big things that we do as well is we pull salary matrices every 6 months. During COVID, we pulled them every 3 months. We are always staying above and beyond and being competitive with salaries. We do annual reviews, we give bonuses, and we also, give our annual raises. And we base that all off of performance reviews. Onboarding, what is your onboarding process? Because that is your first impression. Your onboarding is your first impression for when they walk in that door. What's that look like for you? Coaching, are you able to coach your people up, not trying to use that management style, but really sit there and help people get to that next level, build people up, make them flourish. Training, what does your training program look like? Your performance reviews, and finally your standard operating. So there's a lot here to work on. And as you can see, we've been working on this for 2 years now, and we are making progress, but it takes time. So anybody have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, so in the 2000s, I saw a lot of kickback about promote within,
right,
and keeping them on board, because the only thing worse than losing a key employee is that you pay for their education to leave.
Okay.
Right. So then there was, well, we don't want to do that. So what can we do? And then there was what I started calling ancillary benefits, which was like childcare support or free lunch on Friday, things that have nothing to do with the benefits package, but it's a benefit of working there. What do you think the trend is today that is the biggest value add for a practice?
I think every practice is different because every culture is different. First off, so you really got to sit and look what the key ingredients need to be when you're making a recipe, because everybody's going to have a different taste. But I will, to add to that is, we need to be careful about entitlement, because, we're trying to get them engaged. And so all these little fluffy things over here sometimes is not the answer. What the answer is really getting down to caring about people. It's all about caring. It's like showing that, being motherly to them, being that they're the big family. And so I think they need to feel supported. And I will tell you, I've heard probably over 1,000 times in my whole career is, we just want to hear thank you. We want to hear that we're doing a good job. It doesn't cost anything for that. So while these other value adds, I think, can be important, especially in the bigger corporations because they can afford them. In the smaller practices, I think it's harder to afford them. So I think you have to go back, and it's going to be, based off what your culture is, how it's set up. Okay.
Good job.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. And Patty has given us a wonderful handout that I will email to everybody. And so that you don't have to remember this, even though I have it, I took pages worth of notes because I did find the information to be credible and valuable. So thank you so much, Patty.
Thank you.